Hello everyone and welcome to my channel YNR Trends. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. The restless wind howled outside the dim cottage on the outskirts of Genoa City, where Mariah Copeland stood trembling, clutching Dominic's soft blanket against her chest as though it were the last fragile tether to sanity she still possessed, her heart racing with a frantic rhythm that echoed the impossible decision that had seized control of her mind hours earlier. Dominic stirred in his carrier on the worn sofa, innocent eyes fluttering in and out of sleep, oblivious to the storm building around him. Mariah's breath hitched, guilt clawing at her chest as the flashes of Abby, Devon, Chance, and especially Tessa sliced through her thoughts like shards of broken glass. She whispered apologies into the stale air as she scribbled one final sentence at the bottom of the letter left on the kitchen table, a letter addressed to the woman she loved more than life, the woman she was about to betray. By the time you read this, we'll be gone. Tears blurred her vision, but resolve hardened behind them. Not delusion, she told herself, but destiny, because the voice that had haunted her dreams since the traumatic surrogacy, since being locked away and forced to care for Dominic in captivity, whispered that Dominic was hers, that she had been chosen to protect him from dangers no one else believed were real. Tessa's laughter echoed faintly in Mariah's memory. The warmth of their bed, the soft music filling their apartment, the plans they made for a future together gone, shattered by fear and lingering trauma that had wrapped itself around Mariah's spirit like chains she couldn't break. She lifted Dominic into her arms, inhaling his sweet scent, the scent that had once symbolized hope but now ignited desperation. Footsteps crunched outside, the sound of Matt, the mysterious confidant Mariah met at support meetings, the man who said he understood her fears, who whispered conspiracies about people trying to take Dominic, who fed the paranoia lurking beneath her grief. He pushed open the door, eyes sharp, voice low, urging urgency, saying they needed to leave before anyone traced her here. Mariah hesitated, the magnitude of what she was about to do almost bringing her to her knees. This wasn't just fleeing. It was kidnapping, betrayal, and perhaps madness. Yet as she replayed every moment when people brushed off her anxiety, questioned her instincts, and dismissed her trauma as lingering tension, she convinced herself that leaving was salvation, not destruction. Tessa, she thought with a shudder, wouldn't understand. She would try to stop Mariah, call Abby, Chance, Devon, turn everyone against her. And so Mariah chose silence, vanishing into the night with Dominic, leaving only the letter propped against the salt shaker, illuminated by the flickering kitchen bulb. Hours later, the search would begin. But for now, Mariah followed Matt into the dark woods as a storm rolled in, lightning slicing through the sky like judgment. Each step away from Genoa City felt like stepping off a cliff, her mind warring between instinct and illusion, fear and maternal devotion. Back in the apartment, Tessa entered, humming softly, expecting to surprise Mariah with takeout and candlelight, unaware of the devastation waiting inside. She froze when she saw the emptied baby carrier, Dominic's stuffed elephant abandoned on the floor like a silent scream. Panic crawled up her throat, fingers trembling as she spotted the envelope with her name scrawled in Mariah's shaky handwriting. A dread she had never known squeezed her chest as she opened the letter and read Mariah's confession. Her fear that Dominic was in danger, her belief that they had to disappear, her plea for Tessa not to follow. Tessa's knees buckled, tears streaming, phone slipping from her grasp as she dialed frantically through sobs, calling Abby, Devon, the police, anyone who might help. But the letter ignited suspicion, not just in Tessa but in those who read it. Was Mariah protecting Dominic, or had trauma finally broken her? Abby's wail echoed across the living room as she realized her son was gone. Chance slammed his fist against the table, fury and guilt colliding. Devon blamed himself for trusting Mariah too blindly, for ignoring signs of unraveling. And Tessa? Her grief metamorphosed into fierce determination, vowing to find Mariah before fear consumed her entirely. Meanwhile, Mariah and Matt sped down deserted roads toward a remote cabin Matt claimed was safe, a place where no one would find them. Rain hammered the windshield, wipers scraping violently, thunder rattling their vehicle. Dominic cried, his sobs piercing Mariah's fragile resolve until she nearly begged Matt to stop. But Matt's tone grew sharper, more controlling, urging her to stay strong, warning her that going back would doom them. Something shifted in Mariah, fear prickling her skin as she glimpsed a darkness in Matt's eyes she hadn't noticed before. Had she been manipulated? Had trauma clouded her judgment so completely she trusted a stranger with her life? And Dominic's? Tessa's voice haunted her, begging her to come home, to trust love instead of fear. But the storm outside and inside raged too violently for clarity. Back in Genoa City, law enforcement mobilized. Abby's grief transformed into rage as she accused Mariah of betrayal, screaming that she would never forgive her. Tessa defended Mariah through sobs, insisting she wasn't acting maliciously, that trauma had rewired her mind. But when Chance uncovered disturbing information about Matt, aliases, multiple addresses, a past involving mental manipulation, panic escalated. Tessa, overcome with dread, realized Mariah wasn't just running. She was following a dangerous man. At the cabin, Dominic's cries echoed through the musty room as Matt locked the door, telling Mariah they were going off-grid, destroying phones and cutting ties. Mariah's heart pounded with terror, her delusion shattering into clarity. She had made a terrible mistake. She clutched Dominic tightly, mind racing, tears streaming, begging Matt to let them go. But Matt's voice hardened, insisting she belonged with him now, that Dominic needed them both, not the people who ignored Mariah's suffering. Mariah's realization hit like lightning. Matt didn't want to protect Dominic. He wanted control over Mariah. She backed away slowly, adrenaline flooding her system. And miles away, Tessa screamed Mariah's name into the night, vowing through tears that she would find her no matter what, unaware that the man Mariah trusted was unraveling faster than the storm outside. His obsession growing, his motives darkening. The kidnapping wasn't the end. It was the beginning of a terrifying descent that would leave Genoa City reeling, alliances fractured, and love pushed past its breaking point as Mariah, Dominic, and Matt disappeared into the night, the letter on the kitchen table becoming the catalyst for a desperate hunt that would test every relationship and expose secrets no one wanted uncovered. Back in Genoa City, the hours after Dominic's disappearance crawled with unbearable tension, every passing minute thick with fear and accusation as Abby spiraled into panic, pacing the living room like a caged animal, screaming at officers who assured her they were doing everything possible. Devin tried to remain level-headed, but his voice trembled when he reminded everyone that Dominic's medical needs required close monitoring, especially during storms that made road travel perilous. While Chance wrestled with guilt for failing to notice signs that Mariah was unraveling beneath her calm exterior. The letter Tessa held shook violently in her trembling hand as she reread Mariah's words, trying to decipher hidden meaning, searching for clues buried between frantic confessions and cryptic warnings that someone is watching, and they can't take Dominic away again. Tears blurred the ink, but Tessa forced herself to focus, because she knew Mariah better than anyone. Knew her trauma wasn't paranoia but a wound that had festered in silence. She pleaded with authorities to consider the psychological triggers that drove her wife into Matt's arms. But as officers uncovered Matt's criminal past, Tessa's defenses dissolved into dread. Rain battered the windows, lightning illuminating Abby's pale face, her expression shifting from grief to rage as she snapped at Tessa, accusing her of ignoring warning signs, of enabling Mariah's delusions. Tessa shot back through clenched teeth that Abby was blind to Mariah's suffering, only ever seeing Dominic instead of the woman who risked her sanity for motherhood. Chance intervened, slamming his fist, demanding they focus on finding the baby before blame tore them apart, but the cracks were already spreading like fractures in glass. Meanwhile, miles away, Mariah's pulse hammered in her ears as she rocked Dominic on the creaky wooden floor of the isolated cabin. The electricity flickered, shadows stretching across splintered walls, the storm outside rattling windows while Matt paced with unsettling urgency, mumbling about preparing for whoever they sent. Mariah's instincts screamed danger now. Not imagined but real, her fog of trauma lifting as Matt's mask slipped. She watched him rummage through toolboxes and duffel bags, removing wire cutters, maps, burner phones, things she hadn't questioned before but now recognized as signs of something far darker than misguided protection. Dominic whimpered, sensing the rising panic. Mariah clutched him close, whispering lullabies through tears as guilt flooded her. She had become the danger she feared. Matt stopped abruptly, eyes wild, demanding Mariah hand over her personal phone so he could destroy it. She hesitated, fingers curling around it reflexively, but forced herself to comply, heart cracking as she handed him the last thread connecting her to Tessa. He smashed it beneath his boot, shards scattering. Mariah flinched but forced a calm smile, masking terror behind trembling lips, knowing she had to play along until she found a way out. Back in town, crisis units mobilized as information surfaced. Surveillance footage captured a vehicle resembling Matt's outside a remote gas station heading toward the northern mountains. Chance immediately prepared to deploy units despite the storm, refusing to waste time. Abby, shaking uncontrollably, clung to Devon, who reassured her through tears that Dominic would be found. Tessa stood frozen, a sudden clarity piercing through panic. The letter, she realized, contained a strange metaphor only Mariah would use, referencing the first place we felt safe. It wasn't symbolic. It was literal. Their first safe place was a mountain overlook they once visited while escaping emotional turmoil early in their relationship. Tessa screamed for police attention, insisting she knew where Mariah might be headed. Officers hesitated, doubting her certainty, but Tessa refused defeat. She tore out into the storm, determination overpowering fear, vowing to find Mariah herself if necessary. Meanwhile, at the cabin, Matt returned, breath ragged, eyes darting as if he sensed someone approaching. He began boarding windows, claiming that Abby had already sent hired mercenaries. Mariah's pulse quickened when she noticed him locking the door from the outside. Trapped. Dominic's cries grew desperate, the tension suffocating. Thunder crashed, shaking loose plaster from the ceiling. Matt's voice dropped into a chilling calm, telling Mariah that once the storm hit full force, no one would reach them. Mariah forced herself to smile weakly and asked if she could feed Dominic, using the moment to scan for exits. A small window above the sink, the aging back door with rusting hinges, the fireplace that vented upward. Ideas raced. Matt approached too close, touching her shoulder in a possessive way that made bile rise. She pulled Dominic tighter, masking revulsion with compliance. Outside, Tessa drove into the darkness, headlights barely cutting through sheets of rain, adrenaline keeping her alert. She replayed Mariah's voice in her mind. The fear, the tremors, the desperate belief that someone wanted Dominic. Tessa whispered apologies into the darkness, promising she would find them. Back at the cabin, the howling wind intensified, trees groaning. Matt extinguished lights, muttering that darkness gave them advantage. Mariah realized she had minutes, maybe seconds, to act before escape became impossible. She summoned strength she never knew existed, whispering to Dominic that Mommy would fix this. As Matt turned away to secure another window, Mariah slipped quietly toward the kitchen window. The storm masked her footsteps. She managed to unlatch it silently despite trembling hands. She lifted Dominic into his carrier, whispering soothing words to muffle his cries. Then Matt spun around abruptly, eyes narrowing, sensing movement. Mariah froze, breath held, praying the storm concealed her actions. But Matt stepped toward her, voice eerily calm, asking where she thought she was going. Mariah didn't think. Instinct overtook reason. She grabbed the heavy cast iron pan beside the sink and swung it with trembling strength. It connected. Matt crashed to the floor unconscious, or worse. Mariah choked back sobs, adrenaline flooding her as she dragged Dominic toward the window. She pushed through freezing rain, branches whipping her face, shoes sliding in mud as she sprinted toward the dark tree line. Lightning illuminated the forest as she disappeared into the storm, unaware that Tessa's vehicle was already climbing the mountain road from the opposite direction. Two desperate paths barreling toward collision as every second counted, and Genoa City braced for the shocking fallout of Mariah's escape. A kidnapping driven not by malice but by a mother's fractured love pushed beyond its breaking point. Branches clawed at Mariah's clothes as she stumbled deeper into the woods, Dominic's cries muffled against her chest, the carrier straps biting into her shoulders with each frantic step. Rain poured in relentless sheets, thunder rattling the mountainside, and Mariah's breath came in shuddering gasps as adrenaline waned, replaced by the crushing realization that she had no idea where she was going, only that she needed to get as far from Matt as possible. Every rustle in the darkness sent terror racing through her veins. Was he waking, giving chase? Was someone else following? Dominic whimpered again, his tiny voice piercing the storm, fueling Mariah's panic and maternal urgency. She slipped, knees slamming into mud and roots, but forced herself upright, whispering apologies through sobs. Lightning illuminated the winding mountain road just ahead, a single pair of headlights cutting through the storm. Mariah froze, shielding Dominic instinctively, heart hammering as she prepared to flee again. But then she heard it. Tessa's voice slicing through wind and rain like salvation. Mariah! Please! Stop! The headlights shut off and Tessa's silhouette emerged, drenched, trembling, tears mixing with rain as she held out her shaking hands, voice breaking as she begged Mariah to come home. Mariah shook her head violently, backing away, fear and shame warring inside her. She cried that she couldn't go back, that no one understood, that someone wanted to take Dominic and she failed to protect him. Tessa stepped closer, voice soft but unyielding, telling Mariah she believed her now, that she should have listened sooner, that trauma doesn't vanish just because the pain becomes inconvenient. Mariah's resolve cracked. Her trembling body sagged under exhaustion and terror. Dominic cried again, louder this time, as though sensing the decision before them. Then twigs snapped behind them, and a shadow staggered from the tree line, matte, blood trickling down his temple, eyes wild with betrayal, shouting that Mariah belonged with him, that Tessa couldn't save her, that Dominic needed their protection. Before Mariah could react, headlights blazed from the opposite direction as police cars screeched into the clearing, Chance, Abby, and Devon rushing forward. Matt lunged toward Mariah, but Chance tackled him to the ground, officers restraining him as he screamed conspiracy-laced accusations into the storm. Mariah collapsed into Tessa's arms, sobbing uncontrollably as Abby rushed toward Dominic, only to stop short at the sight of Mariah and Tessa clinging to each other in the rain, grief, guilt, and empathy clashing on every face in the clearing. Devon gently lifted Dominic from the carrier, whispering reassurances through tears. Mariah, shivering and hollow-eyed, whispered to Tessa that she never meant to hurt anyone, that she thought she was protecting Dominic the way she failed to protect him before. Tessa cupped Mariah's face, promising that healing wouldn't come from running, but from confronting the darkness together. Sirens faded as officers hauled Matt away. Mariah stared at the retreating lights, realization settling heavy in her chest. The threat she feared wasn't from strangers, it was the trauma she carried inside, festering because no one could see it. As the storm calmed and first light crept over the mountains, Mariah surrendered to authorities, agreeing to treatment, not punishment. Tessa watched her taken away, heart aching but hopeful as she whispered into the dawn that love would bring Mariah home again. Not through escape, but through healing, closure, and redemption, marking the shocking end of a terrifying chapter, and the beginning of a long road back.